Alright, hey guys, it's AO here, bringing you another replay analysis. This one is of Ayin, our green player. It's been a minute since I've done these, so I hope you guys will have to bear with me a little bit. Um, Also, like I might have some crazy widgets on that you guys aren't familiar with, but I have all these on just kind of testing them and stuff, but um, so things might look a little bit different than they used to, or other than they might not look like the default stuff. Anyways, let's speed up a little bit and see what's going on here. Alright, so you got some grunts coming out. Slow down a little bit. Okay, already right here. Okay, you are adding on some wins, so that's good. Um, yeah, important to keep adding it on. In this kind of position, I would recommend doing a lot of wins. Um, Given that the wind is at a, it's like the maximum is not too high and the minimum's not too low. So it's like it's at a spot where it's not going to really hurt you to get a lot of wins, other than you're going to need a lot of it, since it doesn't, since it doesn't go like all the way to 20 or anything like that. You got a resbot out, eating the crystals for some extra energy. Very nice. Okay, so you got your first con out. Get another resbots. Okay. I think you sent a couple grunts out here. Yeah, you got a grunt out here. Just looking around, doing a little scouting. And your energy looks like it's okay. Okay, so this right here. Uh, okay, so firstly, I would try to grab this sooner because this is kind of a big deal. You're kind of floating metal right now, so you do need the build power. And on this map, like the crystals are nice to have, but I would say definitely going to be nice to keep adding on some wins. One of the things you can do is just add on a storage so that it's a little bit easier to tell, like so you don't just like instantly run out of energy, and then realize like, oh, I need more energy, and then add on more wind or whatever it is. Because yeah, even though you're reclaiming, it's quite low, and now it's like too high. Like that's like it's so quick to go from way too low to like all the way full. So storage is really nice with that. But yeah, so this construction turret, I would recommend putting over here, mainly because you want the build power for your factory, but also so that you can help build these geos. So it's like instead of building, a construction turret here to help, say, with this geo, you're building it here so that it can help with the geo plus help with the factory afterwards, or before and after, I guess. Would help a lot, I think. This solar collector, I don't know if you really need it. I would maybe recommend a few more wins and then just get the geo. All that extra energy you can just, from the crystals, you can use to pump out the geo pretty nicely. So up front, so you got a nice little force here. Okay, so you're able to get in front at a reasonable time to secure your metal. This, I would maybe recommend over here instead, or at least like closer. The reason being is this mech right here is not really going to be protected with this LLT. I mean, it will a little bit, but anything with even a little bit of range will be able to pick off that mechs pretty easily, and you'll have to like keep rebuilding it and stuff, and it's kind of annoying. So I'd just recommend putting it up, somewhere a little bit closer, basically. And sorry, my scribbles are terrible, but in that area, it kind of looks like a face actually. Um, but yeah, just somewhere a little bit further up is all. Yeah, so you're getting a second one of these. Okay. Anti-air, okay. Yeah, I mean, pretty reasonable stuff. Your metal's going down now. Your energy's looking a little bit better with the advanced solars. And I would say that while this is a reasonable time to do this, I would prioritize just getting units out. Because if you don't have enough units to defend this, in fact, like, I would say that this is very few things to actually defend this. Like a commander and a couple of rocket bots and maybe a couple thugs could totally wipe all this out. You do have a couple thugs of your own to, coming in here to support it, but um, it just at the higher levels, like there could be a few more coming in, especially this mechs I'm noticing you haven't grabbed yet, so your metal income isn't quite as high as it could be either. Um, so yeah, just prioritize maybe the units because this is very few at this time, and then make sure you have the metal extractor, and then while these kind of work out, I would actually recommend just getting more wins and then getting the geos in this spot. Okay, doing some dancing with the Rockos. Energy is getting quite low because of this. So here's the thing about geos, and I know this was one of the questions that you were asking about. So I want to dive into it a little bit deeper. Most of the time, in order to afford, say, like a solar collector, right? Like a solar collector, is for Cortex anyway. 370 metal, which is not a lot when you compare it to regular solar. Given that it gives, like I think it's like 3 times more, or sorry, 2.5 times more, or no, is it 3 times? 3.5 times more. I'm trying to remember the numbers without doing the math. But yeah, it's very efficient on metal compared to the regular solar. But it does cost 4,000 energy. So it does set your energy back a bit. The crystals on this map kind of help with that, but if you take that out of the equation, normally you'd need significantly more power going up to support building these in an efficient manner. And then the geo is basically the same kind of train of thought, except it's more expensive. It produces a lot more energy, but it also costs significantly more energy in metal. But given the crystals on this map, you can eat enough crystals to basically build a geo rather quickly. And yeah, I would recommend getting this one first with the consorts back here. Again, mainly because you can support the construction of units while also, when you find a moment of breathing room, you can, switch from producing units to producing the geo quickly. Basically what I like to do anyway, or I think what is a good plan here, instead, is to produce plenty of units to begin with, and then once you have, once you feel like you can hold against all the dots that you see here, some of these dots you actually know what they are too, so that does help out. But once you feel comfortable holding against the dots, take your construction turrets and produce the geo. That way you're basically stopping production on units temporarily just for a moment while you produce the geo. And that way you get the energy going for that, and then you can start like converters or whatever it is you want to do for it, or with it. Let's remove some of these scribbles. But yeah, since, I mean, it's kind of nice having this geo because it is, whoa, that's a lot of lines. Let's see, what is that one? Wait, is it that one? Yeah, it's that one. So this is the ring of like the damage around it. So I can understand it not being in your base because that is, a sizable ring even for T1. I wouldn't say it's a ton of damage, but it is a sizable ring, so I can understand it being away from the base. But with that in mind, I don't know, it's just these conturrets are not by this bot lab, so your unit production is significantly slowed because of that. And if you're going to do a play like this, the solution would be to build some consorts over here as well. But yeah, that, I don't know, it just makes it hard to produce units. Okay, so you're going forward factory off this. I mean, you do have the metal to do that. Personally, I don't like a forward factory, mainly because this is so forward. This is your defensive line. Oops, that line came out of nowhere. Since your defensive line is literally like right next door to where you're producing the factory, if anything happens to this front line, this factory is basically toast. So it's just it doesn't give a lot of wiggle room. And the thing of it is, with radar, all you're gonna see is dots. You might see a few units like you do right now, but you don't really know what he has. Like they could be hiding a bunch of stuff here. And so like, if this is like mainly medium tanks or something, this is completely ruined. This is completely gone. There's no wiggle room. You're just basically, losing all that metal from the vehicle lab, and it's going to make you, or it's going to put you in a position where it's very difficult to stay alive even. Um, I mean, you will. I mean, since you still have the bot lab, like, you have that to fall back on. But ideally, you should not have both labs either, because basically, all that metal could be units instead. And if you lack the units at your front line, then your opponent can just run in and squash you. And I'll talk about this in a little bit because I think yellow runs at you in not too long. So I'll kind of discuss it there a little bit. Basically, if you have two players that have the exact same eco because they have the same mexes and all that, and say they're both doing the exact same ish kind of job in terms of eco. A player that has more units will win that fight and be able to push through and kill you. So matching them in units is very important. And then once you are able to once you have enough units to defend it, then it really matters what type of units you have to defend it with. Because they're not going to be the same. Like if you have all grunts, even if you have equal in cost to his army, like those grunts probably won't do as well against like a ball of thugs or something like that. So something to keep in mind. Um, in fact, well, we'll just wait because you talk about Janices too, so I want to see where the Janices come in play. Okay, so you're doing some poking with your thugs. Nice. Got an arty out, producing a couple arties. Medium tanks. Okay, very nice. Doing some healing, also very nice. Oh, accidentally lose the res bots. Little bit's unfortunate. Yeah, I would say that in this kind of battle, like if you're against a bunch of artillery like you are, you might want to consider a jammer, because then you're not constantly getting shelled basically, and it requires them to actually get it in your face to do anything. I wouldn't say that's a requirement or anything, it's just something to consider. So now you see like he has a bunch of Janices. You go into medium takes. Ooh. Okay, well, we're not really going to talk about this. This is kind of a separate thing. Main focus here, you had your units balled up, and the Janices got some nice attacks on that, like on the ball, on the clump, which is not ideal by any means. Highly, highly, highly suggest getting yourself in the habit of drawing lines. Even if you feel like it's slowing you down, even if it feels very alien, just do it. Because, if you don't draw lines, or if you don't get in that habit of drawing lines and you ball up like that, a few Janices will just ruin your day. Obviously mistakes happen. I don't know if that was, I don't know how often that happens with you, but yeah, see the Janices just obliterated those units. Like they didn't even stand a chance. Whereas if they were in a line, chances are all these Janices would fire at one of them. And you'd lose one of them and the other ones would still be alive. Also, given that you're against Janices and stuff, I would not recommend poking them with your thugs like that. Because the thugs are just going to die. The ideal way to go about dealing with these Janices is to mass up a sizable army first, and then attack. If you do a few unit pokes here and there, like, no matter what, they're just going to take a lot of extra shots from the Janices. So the idea is to have enough units to be able to kill off the Janices quickly. If you don't kill them quickly, then they're going to live longer and take extra shots. So just try not to, trying to gauge how many units you need and then going in. And some of the times you might not have enough. You might just be wrong on the unit count, but I think it's a very, very good um, thing to get in the habit of trying to gauge. Um, because yeah, being able to gauge stuff like that will definitely help you out in like knowing like, okay, I know what unit types he's going for. I know how many dots I see. You know, but I also know that I have enough units and I can just roll right on through. Um, in fact, let's talk about the units types a little bit. So you're up against medium tanks and Janisses. This is definitely a style that I like to do personally. On a lot of different maps. Looks like he has a forward vehicle lab here that I don't know. I wouldn't recommend that. But basically, the idea is, um, let's see. There's more than one thing I want to talk about here. But yeah, I would actually recommend if you're going up against artillery and tanks, mostly like he doesn't have a lot of pork type of thing. I do not recommend these artillery. Um, if your plan is to kind of chill back here and make sure he doesn't, attack you and just make it annoying for him, then the artillery can do an okay job. But they're very bad at doing actual engagements. So I just don't recommend. I don't know. I'm very against the whole artillery versus artillery kind of thing. Um, but let me dive into that a little deeper. So if my opponent builds a bunch of artillery, I know that those artillery are not tanks. They're not medium tanks. They're not Janisses. And I know that as long as they're not, completely engaging my army continuously, if I have like a jammer or something to protect this location, or if I just fall back if he gets too close with my units, while I'm building up enough units. If we're on similar economy and he has artillery and medium tanks and I have just medium tanks, then I'll have more medium tanks and I can just roll through and I can just kill him. It doesn't um, it doesn't matter that he has more, that he also has artillery. It's that the artillery can't really do a straight up fight. So if he just has less medium tanks than I do, I'll just win the fight. It's kind of like the same thing with like thugs and pawns, or I should say thugs and grunts. Um, if my opponent builds like a whole mess of grunts and I have a whole mess, or I have like the equal amounts of thugs, then I know I can just push right through him because those grunts are not going to be able to defend um, very well. They're not, they're just not built for that. They're built for running arounds and catching leaks and stuff like that. They're not really meant for like a straight up battle. Um, but yeah, same thing applies here. If you instead had medium tanks, or if you instead just kept producing thugs, you'd have like a whole lot of thugs instead. Especially if you spent all your metal and didn't build this vehicle plants. Ideally, you'd spread them out. Um, I was talking about doing a line to spread them out before. Like, let's see, I gotta turn off player view, I think, to do this. Um, let's see. Okay, so if you just do a normal attack, or I'm sorry, if you do a normal move, and do a line like that, it makes a line, it spreads out a little bit. But if you have a lot of thugs, doing this line, they'll still be clumped up. It'll be like, it'll be more like um, the line will look like this, but much larger because you have more thugs, right? So instead, what you want to do is draw like kind of a back and forth kind of thing. So you have some frontline ones, some like middle ground ones, and some backline ones. Basically, just to spread them out so that if one gets shot by Janice, like it's only one. Like instead of having it all clumped together and dying all at once and shit like that. Um, while vehicles are going to be a little bit stronger to deal with this, um, I think it is possible, and it's a little bit harder to do with bots. But yeah, if you're going to do the vehicle thing, highly recommends selling this, reclaiming it. Um, Instead of putting your vehicle factory here, I would put it over here by your build power, and then add on maybe a little bit more build power even, um, so that your metal gets spent basically. Because if your metal gets spent on units, like if all that metal's in units or in or not artillery, in like medium tanks, they can literally just crush this entire thing, no problem. Um, Obviously he has a little metal too, so he could have some more units out here as well, but he also did the whole vehicle thing and bot factory thing without reclaiming the bot factory. Um, they also have all three of these geos, whereas at this point in time you only have the one. And again, that kind of has to do with your build power being here instead of back here, because those three geos are a big deal. Um, and that way you have room so that if your opponent does push past this point, oftentimes they'll push past that point and kind of set up here, and they'll say, this is a good forward position. If I continue my attack, then I might just lose everything, so I'm not going to continue my attack. I'm just going to sit up here and be very careful about it. That's what will mostly happen. If it doesn't happen that way, they can continue to press forward, but you can also have, if you keep your massive units alive, by the time they get to this point, it's far enough away from their base that if you are keeping up with their economy, you'll have equal numbers, or you'll have equal or greater numbers. In theory, you should have a greater numbers, but obviously you lost some stuff up here to get to that point as well. Um, I hope this makes sense. I know it might be kind of an abstract kind of thing, and I know I'm kind of rusty on talking about all this stuff. So definitely, post your questions. I know I'm not very good at explaining myself at times, and this might be one of those times because I'm not used to talking about this stuff right anymore. Um, wow, that's a lot of artillery from that guy. Yeah, so here yellow's just pushing forward with Janice's. Um, yeah, this HLT, I don't really recommend doing a lot of pork against tanks, mostly because it just doesn't deal enough damage. Like it gets annoying to deal with, but HLTs actually get outranged. Let's see, range is 620, right? These Wolverines have range of 710. So this HLT without a jammer is not going to do anything for you. Assuming that they understands that correlation or that connection. Or, yeah, I think you know what I mean. But yeah, it's pretty GG at this point, especially since your commander blew up everything that you had. You lost a lot of stuff that you had, and your opponent basically kept everything alive, or most things alive. And the guys south of you is not doing, like, these guys are not doing too well either. Just kind of have an issue. Blue doing a lot of grunt spam here, which, given the situation, that's kind of necessary just to try to stay alive and have some resistance, but in a way that's, spending a lot of money on these grunts that aren't really doing anything except delaying. And they're not really doing any damage, they're just dying, so that's just metal lost basically in order to keep people in the game. Meanwhile everybody else is probably teching up and shit like that. In fact, your guy now has T2, especially after eating the commander here. Definitely rough. Yeah, so now just producing out of here. So yeah, main takeaways. You built the Geo here, and your nanos over here. And I would recommend just doing it here so it's safer, and so that you can get all three of these with the nanos to build it quickly. In terms of the timing for the Geos, I would recommend getting more wins first. Making sure you're not overeating crystals to produce the wind. But once you have a reasonable amounts of wins, like basically maybe like double this, around double that. I would maybe start getting your geo, your first geo. Um, by that time, you probably should have a couple of concerts already. If not, then plenty of builders to assist the lab with. Because again, the whole thing is to produce enough units to defend early or to do run bys early before this gets all choked up with units. Um, if you don't plan on doing run bys with grunts early, then I would just produce thugs a little bit sooner as well. But yeah, moving the geo back, moving your construction turrets back. Um, if you do decide to put it up here, um, I would recommend putting the vehicle lab within the construction turret range so that they can assist the vehicles out. And that way you're not floating as much metal. Instead, you have the units, which, the units will help, not only defend the region, but like, if you start seeing a bunch of artillery or seeing a bunch of missile trucks or something like that, if you produce just like medium tanks and um, maybe a few missile trucks of your own, but if you do mostly missile or mostly medium tanks and you see artillery, you can push through once you have enough if you're spending all your money on just units. And then once you push through, you can take out all these mexes and stuff, prevent them from doing T2. Maybe even get back here with a couple of units. That's something that I will see once in a while too. Is I'll be able to just get back here eventually with a bunch of units and destroy some eco. Um, Definitely a big deal. Like if you're ever able to kill off one of these geos, definitely a big deal. Um, but yeah, going back to talking about the Janices, um, ideally instead of like I saw you clumping up your units, I would highly recommend dispersing them as much as possible, even if it doesn't feel natural or if it's slowing you down or something like that. Just drawing that line, even doing like a zigzag line to spread them out even further. Um, will help out a lot so that they're not all dying to just a few shots. Um, but yeah, I think the vehicles were fine, but reclaiming your bot lab to be able to produce more vehicles would have helped a lot. Um, just having maybe like one more construction turret or something, or a little bit more build power on your vehicle lab to produce those units. Um, and then yeah, once you start getting the geos, like once you have your first one, you can basically, try to find time to do a second one. Um, what I mean by that is, yeah, if you feel safe at the fronts here, like, say you have, 5 medium tanks and a couple of LLTs, and he has 5 medium tanks, you know, um, I mean, I guess that's not a good example because once you have, I mean, if it's just 5 medium tanks, it's not, if you start producing a geo that early, like by the time it's done, like there'll be enough tanks to roll you maybe. So maybe like say 10 medium tanks against 10 medium tanks, and and it's basically equal, and you don't feel like they're gonna push you, and your energy is doing all right. Like you have enough wins coming in to support building the geo. Um, then yeah, building the geo at that time, and then once you have one, you get a couple converters, get a couple construction turrets, add on a second geo, and then the third geo, and stuff like that. And then as you get more time, you just keep getting geos. After the first 3 geos and a couple or a bunch of converters to use that energy, you could have a bunch of construction bots out and start grabbing the more forward geos if you can. Um, yeah, my personal style is more getting like more construction bots out sooner and just building things one at a time as quickly as possible. If it's wind, I maybe do 2 construction bots together to produce like one set of winds and then like a couple more for another set of winds. Um, on this map though, obviously, there's all the crystals, so you don't really need as many winds. You can go straight into Geo, but you do need more than this for sure. Um, so you did add on these advanced solar collectors, um, which does work, but at the same time, they're kind of in the same boats as the Geo. I would not recommend getting them until you have a lot of energy excess already compared to metal. Um, mainly because they cost so much more energy than metal. Um, and yeah, if you need energy, I don't recommend these. Like if you need energy in the future, then I would. Just not when you actually need it. Um, but again, the crystals help with that, so yeah, not a big deal on this map. I feel like I'm going around in circles a little bit. I apologize for that. I'm just trying to get my head around thinking about replays again, so I apologize. Definitely let me know if you have questions. Um, I'll try to answer them as best as possible without going in more circles. But yeah, I think that wraps it up. But yeah, please get back to me with questions. I'll see you around.